Well, this is going to be an interesting one. Um, as someone who watched Shrek as a teenager and enjoyed it in large part because I saw it as a parody and didn't take the story seriously, while looking at it as a parody, I noted certain things as a child that were just incongruous to the story, and I knew that they were things that were kind of sort of backwards or something because of the fact that they were, making fun of the original materials and not trying to do it seriously. Well, these three recently watched a video about was Lord Farquaad right? Well, Fiona and the Dragon makes this story even more head scratching when you look at it. So let's get in with that, and hopefully these three will enjoy the analysis of the plot. So the core question of who is the dragon is something that the movie just kind of ignores. But the more I thought about it after watching the movie, the more important the question became. Because we have very, very little information, and all of it is connected to Fiona's past, which, yeah, that kind of makes for a rabbit hole because the fact that you're groping through the darkness because there's no light down there, and you need to and finding answers when you can't see where you're going. Yeah, not easy. Anyway, so what do we have? First, there's the fact that Lord Farquaad needs to marry a princess in order to become a king. Here are the three people who are presented as available for him to marry and become a king. I have to question whether or not Cinderella and Snow White should count because the fact that I know that Cinderella's parents were not royalty in the original story. She married royalty, but yeah, Snow White, I believe that her parents were actually some sort of royalty. I don't necessarily think that she was a princess in the original story, though. Again, married a prince. Anyway, though, Fiona, like I mentioned, Lord Farquaad needs to marry a princess to become a king. Duloc isn't a kingdom because for Farquaad to become a king, he would be the first king of Duloc. And another thing that's interesting is that the way that they position the shot here, the dragon is somehow the most important part of Fiona's character is presented because, like Cinderella, you have the stepsisters. Snow White, you have the fact that she's unconscious or dead inside a glass coffin. Fiona, she's guarded by a dragon. In the first two cases, that was a major part of their backstory. Uh, they don't tell us Fiona's backstory. She lives here, though. Does this bridge actually make sense in the context of the movie? No. In fact, Donkey points out how unsafe it looks and the fact that it's not part of the original castle design. The castle is trashed. I mean, you saw at the first slide how large Duloc Castle is. Well, before it got trashed, this one was probably bigger. Like, and also it's like this place was a proper kingdom. So for it to have a larger, more impressive castle than something like Duloc that isn't a kingdom makes sense. Since Lord Farquaad's motive is to inherit Fiona's father's royal title. As king of, yeah, we have no idea where this place is. It's actually not far, far away, because far, far away is the kingdom that Cinderella lives in, not this one. Although far, far away is a description of where the place is, not, and it's not a proper name, so whatever. Anyways, yeah. So this is unnamed, much like the dragon. Yeah, they call him Donkey and Dragon, and that's literally the only two names the characters have in the movie. And this is just the castle. As for what destroyed the castle, I'm guessing some sort of a magical war, because it doesn't make sense to have these swirling clouds centered on Fiona's tower. It's very, fairy tale, fantasy kind of cursed, destroyed kingdom. Cursed and destroyed by what? I don't really think the dragon did all of it. It's like some of this damage does look like it could be the result of a dragon attacking a castle, but the lava lake and the swirling clouds don't make sense in that regard. So, someone wanted to take out this entire kingdom and did. Everyone in the kingdom except Fiona is dead now, apparently. The inside of the castle is really, really bad shape. Obviously, this is not the way you would want your castle to look. A lot of things have fallen down. You see cracks in the floor where the lava isn't just outside the castle. The foundation of the castle is compromised, and presumably this is why Fiona lives in the tower, because the lower levels are not, comfortable to live in due to the, lava. Also, there's corpses everywhere. There are so many corpses scattered around in here that you would have to freeze frame the entire part of the movie and manually count them all, and then question your results because you're not sure whether or not it's the same corpse you saw 5 minutes ago. There's just that many corpses scattered all over the place. And we know that some of them are suitors, but some of them don't make sense as suitors. And also there's the whole thing of like, this is a big castle, really, really big castle of a proper kingdom. And Fiona's the only person left alive, and these are seemingly corpses. Also, another thing that's noteworthy here is that whatever destroyed the kingdom happened during Fiona's lifetime. It's not clear when. Just that presumably it's been several years, and that's really all we know. Also, this suit of armor is blackened by flame breath. This guy presumably got incinerated by the dragon. Were all of them killed that way? Well, it's hard to be sure. And here's another shot showing just how big the castle is. It's like, this is Shrek looking at the castle from the interior and looking at this great hall where half the great hall has collapsed. And he's looking up through the gaping hole where the roof of the great hall should be at Fiona's tower. Yeah, also, it's like, I have to question how the castle hasn't completely fallen down yet, and I'm going to go with magic. Someone used magic to keep the castle from falling down. Anyway, like I said before, it's like, this castle is probably bigger than Duloc, even in its just demolished state. Having this place as a home would actually be massive, and again, it's like Duloc isn't a kingdom because it has a lord as its ruler. Farquaad's predecessor, assuming he had one, that's actually not clear in the movie. It's like they never mention anyone as being Farquaad's ancestor to my remembrance. So, yeah, the predecessor as King of Duloc wasn't, or the predecessor as ruler of Duloc wasn't a king either. And that's why Duloc isn't a kingdom. And why, in order to be recognized as a king, Farquaad has to assume the title of a different royal lineage. Anyways, so now to go back to the whole thing with the dragon. How does Fiona connect to the dragon? Now, he's looking in this room here, and this is actually a pretty nice looking room to live in. Like, there's this thing that's fallen down, but the thing that's fallen down is because Shrek knocked it over. Yeah, this is a scene where Shrek gets somehow knocked through the roof and lands inside her room. Because, like, this is that little, like, tower thing where this room here is like the entire level of the tower. And, you have to, like, go down the tower and leave or something. And this is where she lives. It's basically like in a one-room apartment that she lives in. She doesn't seem to stay here. Like, it's locked from the inside, and presumably Fiona has a key to unlock it because you can't lock it from the outside. That's just not how that door is set up. And then there's the behavior of Fiona. She tries to seduce Shrek and wants him to romance her before rescuing her. And talks about romance while laying on her bed. Yeah. How many of the previous rescuers had she given that speech to? We don't know. The movie doesn't tell us. She does, however, hint that she does actually talk to several of the previous rescuers before they died. And she actually says quite a few things about what she expects of rescuers and what she expects them to behave as, and you're just kind of like scratching your head watching this. Is like, what is wrong with you? She doesn't actually want to leave her castle. She wants to stay here because presumably this is actually her home from, when she grew up. So she doesn't really want to leave. She just wants to have someone romance her. And why is the dragon trying to kill all of them? Yeah, we don't actually know. Because, like, Fiona doesn't really act as if she's scared of the dragon. And that's one of those things that raises red alarms. She knows that the dragon has been killing suitors, though. And that doesn't really seem to bother her terribly much. And that's kind of weird. And then there's this scene, which, quite frankly, it's one of those scenes I didn't really pay attention to because it's kind of a blink and you'll miss it scene. But, like, that's a cauldron. That's a cookbook with a diagram of how to dismember people before you cook them. Also, when you take a look at the book is bigger than Shrek. Clearly, this is a book written for people who are larger than humans. And as we all know, the dragon is actually a highly intelligent individual. The dragon can't use human speech, but the dragon does actually seem to have intelligence equal to that of a human. Or an ogre. Definitely smarter than the donkey. So the idea that the dragon is actually reading a book actually makes sense. Because this dragon is a dragon in the vein of Smaug. You see this room where she goes and takes Donkey when she is going to, be like, "Hi there, how are you? You want to be my friend?" Yeah, this is her treasure pile that she has collected. Yeah, it's very much in the vein of how Smaug in Lord of the Rings has this giant heap of gold that he lays on. which, raises the question of whether or not the dragon, took ownership of the castle because she just wanted it as a place to live in and killed the inhabitants. Maybe. The movie is very vague about this, and because of the fact that it's both vague and throws in mixed messages, it's really not clear what it's trying to hint at. Which is actually one of the problems with the world building in this movie, is that it kind of undermines its own world building by not committing to anything. It kind of like throws out vague hints so that they can kind of sort of, pretend it meant whatever they wanted it to later, except that it doesn't actually use it in only one way. It's like the dragon is friendly to Shrek and Donkey later in the movie, and despite the fact that it's trying to kill Shrek early on, and takes Donkey prisoner. Yeah. Anyways, like I said, this movie is just like screwball and only makes sense as a parody of fairy tales and should never have been taken seriously by anyone. At any rate, hope you guys enjoyed it. See you later.